Well, Joe Patel is the Executive Director of Day Lewis Pharmacy Group. He was at the emergency meeting held by the Prime Minister yesterday and joins us now. Good morning to you. The Prime Minister described the meeting as highly valuable. Did you find it so?
I think so, yes. He was very engaging with regards to understanding and wanting to understand the key issues and the practical challenges on the ground. And the audience that were there were able to actually provide him with their insights.
What was the atmosphere like?
Collaborative, very proactive, I would say. People were genuinely asked for their opinions, and they were listened to. There was no rhetoric there. I think generally, in the middle of a crisis, the Prime Minister's taking all the steps he can to try and understand exactly what the core issues are on the ground.
But how it looks to lots of people who are this morning maybe waiting for an ambulance, waiting for a care home bed, waiting to get out of hospital, get into hospital, it will look like people have sat around a table and not a lot's come to it. And in fact, the Prime Minister has pushed the onus onto care providers by saying bold and radical action is needed. Is it bigger than that?
It is bigger than that. It has to be bigger than that, yes. The meeting was, you can't fix the world in a day. But what you can do is try to understand the key issues and then formulate a response accordingly.
And from your perspective as a pharmacist, as somebody who oversees thousands of pharmacists, what more could you do to alleviate the pressure?
Pharmacy is really well placed for this. We have the trust of our patients, we have the access, and we have a highly skilled workforce, both clinically and professionally, and with regards to people. One of the opportunities, and several of the opportunities that we have, is really working around, treatment and acute treatment. We've been asking for many years for a pharmacy first scheme. That's a scheme which actually pays pharmacies, community pharmacies, to be able to offer minor elements of advice to patients who walk in off the street, who often can't get access anywhere else. We've played a massive role in the past 2 years with regards to prevention, particularly COVID vaccinations, but even longer than that, we've been doing flu vaccinations for a long, long time. So why can't we move routine vaccinations into community pharmacy? We've looked at management of patients' conditions, blood pressure testing, as well as giving control to pharmacies to manage their repeat prescription services as well. I mean, my teams are out there on the front line. They are highly skilled. We do have challenges. I'm not going to deny that our workforce issues are a real challenge at present, because unfortunately we've lost many of our highly skilled professionals into different parts of the health service, often to provide more administrative tasks at a time when there is a crisis. But with the right funding, our divisions can actually perform at a very high level and really can play a big role in addressing these issues.
We'll come to funding in a second, but first you referenced then the fact that pharmacists are highly skilled, they're well trained. What's stopping them taking that burden off the NHS and taking the extra steps, for example, in diagnoses, in treatment?
I think often culturally we're not always seen, the community pharmacy isn't always seen as a solution. And that is, again, a massive barrier there. And generally, the second part to that is demand. Actually, we're as a sector, we're set up to be very reactive. We're there. We were there during the and that's great. We were reactive during the pandemic, but now it's a time for us to actually be more proactive with things. How can we take control of our patients a little bit more and be mandated to do so? How can we actually have a list of patients that we are in control of? And addressing key needs, rather than just sort of waiting and suddenly there being a surge of patients coming through the door. That reactive versus proactive is a massive thing there. And again, the pharmacy first service, we are being funded in pharmacy to provide medicines, and we do a very efficient job at doing that. But we need additional funding beyond that to actually repurpose our teams and bolster our teams to be able to provide additional services. So, for example, this year, a large part of our vaccination program has been done by non-pharmacists. We've trained non-pharmacists to be vaccinators in our pharmacy stores. How can we leverage that particular resource?
I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of this chat that it was a collaborative, a positive atmosphere yesterday, but what you keep coming back to is funding, and that's what we're hearing across the NHS, across social care, that sitting down and talking is one thing, but really it boils down to money.
It boils down to money. It also boils down to being funded for the right things. So actually, in some cases in community pharmacy, we have a large portion of our funding put into supplied medicine, which actually comes at a cost. Now, in our case, there we've had a 30% reduction in real-term funding over the last 6 years, which is actually causing a massive challenge when you consider today's pressures. But at the same time, actually, if we could get revenue to provide additional services, that's fine. So in many cases, we're providing clinical services, but we're not adequately being paid for it. We're being paid for the supply, and we're being asked to do a favour. So actually, it's about pointing the money towards a service that we want to deliver. Equally, though, there is lots of inefficiencies in the network within the wider network that needs to be addressed outside of community pharmacy. And again, that could actually repurpose some of those funds in there. So in some cases, it's new money. In some cases, it's actually trying to look at inefficiencies and try to allocate it to the right place. Administrative backlogs, should take a secondary place to actually treating patients.
Yeah. Jay, let's hope yesterday's talks were fruitful. That's Jay Patel, Executive Director of Day Lewis Pharmacy Group. Thank you so much.